John wasn't talking. They weren't getting anything. So, you know what they did? They got together and they said, we got to create something that causes them to talk about something. So they went out and they planted a news story about the Castellano killing to bring it up again. Now, this is years after the killing, right? To stimulate talk. And that's what it was all over the news. It was in the newspaper, it was on television. They prompted the media to do this. And that's what stimulated the talk on the tapes again to get them start talking about stuff. Believe that?
Hi, this is Chazz Palminteri.
The Wise, and I'm Michael Franzese.
The wise guy.
And as
Michael, tell them what's going on.
Yeah, as you can see, we're not together for the first time doing this. We're not together, but the reason for that, our schedules for the past couple of weeks have been so crazy. We're on opposite sides of the country. I live in California. Chazz is in the New York area. So it's been a little bit crazy. We're not going to do Zooms often, but we don't want to keep content off the, site for all of you because we're getting such great messages, such great comments. Right. And we just want to keep it going. And by the way, we really appreciate that. The comments have been great, makes us feel good, and just wants us to keep moving on.
Absolutely. Just hit that subscribe button, and we love to hear your comments. Absolutely.
And we got a couple of things today we want to talk about. But first thing, Chazz, we have to talk about because everybody's commenting on it. It's the new Gotti series on Netflix. It's called Get Gotti. And, I always say this, unless you've been living under a rock for the past 20 years, right, there isn't much more they can tell you about Gotti that we haven't already heard. So I know you didn't see this yet, but you don't have to. I'm going to give you, just some insight to it and then ask your comments on it.
Yeah.
It's, the perspective this time is really coming from the various law enforcement agencies and what they did to try to finally bring him down and succeed in bringing him down. So it was interesting in that regard. Some of the things, I learned something that was kind of crazy to me, which I'll bring up, which I didn't realize before. Just one little new thing I got out of it. But, basically, what more can you say? I have to say this. There was one statement at the very end that I totally disagreed with because it was factually incorrect. And that is Laura Ward, who was a prosecutor on the case that I'm familiar with during that time. Right. She said that it was at the end of the day, that it was John Gotti that, quote, brought down the mob. And I've said this, Chazz, 100 times. John Gotti did not bring down the mob. It was the RICO Act that brought down the mob. And, you're familiar. You I'm sure, rub shoulders with guys from the neighborhood. So,
No, once the RICO Act came in, that was it. Because, the mafia was like a chain. It's a combination of things, like you said. It was the RICO Act, them getting involved in drugs. Back then, back then in the 70s, if a guy gets a 3-year bit, it's 2 years, 3 years. He gets a dime, and then he does 4.5 years. People went to jail. They didn't mind. But once the RICO Act came in, and once drugs came in, when now you're facing 50 years, 40 years, it was that combination of both of those things at the same time really brought down the mob. Gotti, he brought down himself, but he didn't bring down the mob. I agree with you with that. Yes.
And I like what you just said. He brought down himself because one of the things they showed in there is that when they finally surveilled, they put surveillance bugging equipment in the apartment above his social club in Manhattan. That's when they really got incriminating information on Gotti. And he, look, I have to be honest, he did say some, a lot of bad things on those tapes, but in his defense, he wasn't looking to hurt anybody. He was saying this in the confines of his own place that he thought was secure, and He was talking to his own guys. So it wasn't that he was putting people in trouble. Unfortunately, Chazz, I've said this, the government did their job better than we did our job.
Yeah.
That was it,
And what's funny? Somebody just told me, I can't think of who the hell it was. Was it you? Somebody just said that when they arrested him the last time, he was really like cocky in the car. He says, yeah, you guys, I'm going to beat this. I'm not worried about nothing. And who was it? And somebody who knew the DA, who knew the arresting FBI guy said to him, not this time, John. How do you, because, we realized that you spoke a lot up in so-and-so's apartment.
Hmm.
And he said that his face just dropped because he knew they bugged the apartment. I'm done. That was it. That was it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and actually, they showed that in one of the episodes. I think it was the last episode.
Oh, did they?
Yeah,
Really?
when he was in the car when they arrested him, and his face just dropped, and you
Just
just see
dropped,
that.
I heard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That when he knew, because he knew, how did they get to that? I mean, you know what? Not for nothing, but like again, I always clarify, I'm not a wise guy. I hung out with him, but I would never talk about anything anywhere. And that's what the Chin did. And that's why they can never get the Chin, because he wouldn't talk on tape. They never had the guy on tape. And that's why he lasted as long. Because don't you agree, Michael? The way they get everybody is on tape, right?
Most of the time. I mean, so many guys went down for that, and it brings me back to something that my dad taught me at the young age. Because listen, he was a master of the life as far as knowing the politics and how to
Right.
navigate that world. But what he said to me, Chazz, I'll never forget. Okay, just before I got straightened out, he said to me, Michael, remember this. If you and I go out and commit a crime, 30 seconds after it's committed, if you say something to me about it, I'm going to say, what are you talking about? There's no reason to ever talk about it again or ever repeat it again.
Right.
And that stuck with me, And in an investigation, they had 83 tape recordings on me in this big undercover investigation with me and Don King trying to prove that, organized crime infiltrated boxing. They couldn't use one of the 83 tapes, Chaz, because I never committed myself. But I credit my dad for keeping that in my head because I really wasn't sure the guy I was talking about that had the Niagara tape recording on him. But, even there, my dad, in the end, I got to give him a little grace because he was, 90 something years old. They had 200 hours of tapes on him, on my
Jeez.
father, and they were not good. And I just couldn't believe it. I said, Dad, but you know what he said to me when I told him? It ain't me. It ain't me. They doctored the tapes. He still wouldn't admit. He wouldn't admit to it, And I said, "All right, Dad. What could I tell you?" But
That ain't me.
yeah,
Wow.
but I mean, look, I understand. I don't fault John for that, And remember this too. John brought down basically three guys. It was him, Frank Lacazio, and Sammy that were really talked about on those tapes. He didn't bring down the mob. There wasn't anybody else. He didn't, destroy the whole family or anything like that. And I
Right.
guess the prosecutors just want to take credit. They want to throw their chest out and say, hey,
Yes.
we did that. But people forget the commission case came before that where they locked up all the bosses. I mean, there was so many high profile guys that everybody knew about, but Gotti gets that rap all the time.
Now, do you think, Michael, here's a question that I don't know the answer, and I'd like to know, maybe our viewers would like to know. And that is, Sammy the Bull said the reason why he turned was because he heard on the tape that Gotti badmouthed him and he was about to throw him under the bus, and he wanted Sammy to take the rap so he could go free. And Sammy said, "I'm not doing it," and he turned. Is that true or not true? I don't know.
Well, let me tell you this. Just listening to the portion of the tapes that they played, in this series, he did badmouth Sammy. There's no
Right.
question. He did badmouth Sammy. I didn't hear on the tapes him saying that we're going to make Sammy take the rap. My problem with that is it's John's voice himself incriminating himself and everything. So what was he going to say? Sammy made me do it. And don't
Right.
forget, he was
Right.
Sammy's boss. Sammy wasn't his boss, So it's, I
Yeah.
don't know. But I think Sammy claimed there was a private conversation between him and John in the cell that wasn't on tape once they were already locked up. I have no way of knowing that. If
Right.
Sammy
Right.
says it, he says it. Uh,
Yeah.
you know,
Now, is it possible? I was the question I forgot was I going to. Yeah, I mean, is it possible they went to John to ask him to flip, or John would not flip?
John was like my father. They could have put ice picks in his eyes. They could have
Yeah.
chopped his head off. He wasn't going to testify, but so I don't believe he would have done it no matter what. But here's my. I want to ask your opinion to this, Chazz. Here's my problem with that, and I'm going to go back to my father first. My dad, the most stand-up guy in that life, that there ever was, right?
Yeah.
As good as anybody. On the side, he used to tell me, Michael, you know, this life is full of shit. He said that to me 3 or 4 times. I'm not kidding.
Right.
Just between he and I. Probably be upset if he knew that I was saying it now, but we're being honest here. But here's my thing. My dad was out on parole 5 times. Each time he got violated, it was because of association. After the third time, I said to him, Dad, you can't make it in New York. This family is falling apart. My sister is dead. My brother's a junkie. My mother and she can't stand you anymore because she blames you for everything. She's been 30 years without a husband. And I said, you got to move out of New York and you got to preserve the family. And he didn't want to do that. So when we take that oath, Halloween night, 1975, I took an oath and was said to me that if you're at your mother's bedside and she's dying and we call you to service, you leave your mother and you come and serve us. We're number one in your life before anything and everything. When I look back now, I said, how could I agree to something like that? Because most of the guys really put a bad hurt on their families. Families were destroyed. And I look at my dad and I say, okay, Dad, you were a stand-up guy. You were very noble, but look at your family, a total disaster, total disaster. So, I mean, how do you feel about that, Chazz? How would a normal person feel about that?
Well, I mean, I have never, ever, I'm trying to think, other than Vito Gambino, or was it Vito Genovese who never went to jail? Which one was it? I don't
No,
know
it was
which one.
Carlo Gambino never went to
Paulo
jail.
Gambino, no one in jail. Has anybody ever that was a mob guy and his life turned out right? Really not. Really not. I mean, all the mob guys that I knew, their families were destroyed. The kids, grew up without making, their bones, and those are the worst. They think they're tough guys. And so it doesn't work. And you would think a guy would know that. Boy, you got to feel really that there's no other way to do this. I used to say, don't they know? Michael, you're a perfect example. I mean, you're a smart guy. You could be a CEO of any company. When you did it, did you say, nah, I'm not going to get caught ever? Nah, this is a great thing for me to do. Or you just said, hey, I'll take my shot. I got to help my family.
With me, when I first took the oath, obviously I had a very idealistic view of the life. I was going to be part of something my father was part of.
Right.
And I saw it as something very noble, this brotherhood of men.
Right.
Obviously, it's not like that. But you know what, Chazz? No institution in the country is without corruption of some kind.
Yes.
So on the street, you got to expect that it's going to be corrupt and there's going to be backstabbing. It's part of the deal. That's why when some of these guys that flip say, well, they didn't treat me right, or they didn't do this right. Well, what do you expect? That's the street.
Right.
You can't get mad at that. You know what you're getting into. But
Right.
What caused me to leave is I just couldn't do that to my family. I said, I've just been through it with my family. How am I going to do it with my wife and kids? I just can't do it. So that's what caused me to leave. But my question is, so many people throw accolades at John and my father, stand up till the end. They would never rat, which I guess it's a good principle. I understand it. But
Right.
the flip side of that is, look what you did to your family. So,
Right.
I think a normal person says, hey, you know what? Your family comes first. You don't
Yes.
have to put anything above that. You feel that way. I know. I see how you are with your family.
Yes.
I feel that way with mine. But yet they hold guys like John and my father up as idols because they never snitched.
Yeah, but they hold them up as idols to. Oh boy, I don't want to. Got to be careful. I get in trouble every time I say things like this.
Yeah.
But they hold them up to idols to. And again, let me clarify. I know a lot of guys, and I'm good friends with them. And I'm not saying them. Let me clarify that. But there's some guys that they hold them up. The guys that they hold these guys up to, they don't got nothing going for themselves either.
Yeah.
You know, what do you got to look? Why are you looking up to him? Do you want your sons and your daughters to look up to this guy? I don't know. I think it's stand up what Gotti did and your father did and some of those guys, but I go, you know what? That's okay for them. And if that's their legacy and they have to hold on to that, but it's not my legacy, and it's not my legacy that I want for my family. No.
No, and I will say this: if you don't have a family and nobody else relies on you, depends on you, is affected by your actions, hey, go for it. You're by
Right.
yourself. This is the decision you made. Great. But if you got a family that's going to suffer beyond what anything that happens to you, they're going to suffer.
Right.
Then you got to question yourself and say, what am I really doing here? Um, that's how I see it now, and that's having lived through the life, being my father's son, being in
Right.
it myself, walking away the whole bit.
I have
Uh,
a question for you, Michael, and I think the audience would like to hear this. And that is, when you got out, maybe, wait a minute, what am I saying? While you were in solitary, say you didn't have a family, say you never met your beautiful wife. Let's say whatever. Would your life be different now?
yeah, because I would have never walked away, Chaz.
You
I
would have
don't.
stayed.
Yeah, I would have stayed.
Right.
That was the oath that I took, and there would have been nothing to motivate me to leave.
Right.
That was it. So for
Right. Right.
me,
Yeah.
yeah, my wife was life saving. There's no question.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it wasn't. I
Yeah.
want to make. She didn't make any demands on me because she didn't really understand the life. She was 20
Right.
years old when I met her from California. She didn't know anything, but it was just my feeling for her. I said, "Am I going to marry her and then put her through the same thing my family went through and probably lose her a couple of years from
Of
now?"
course.
Because
Yeah.
I was such a target. I mean, they were going to put
Right.
me away forever. There's no question.
Right.
So, you know,
Yeah.
so I'm glad hopefully the audience understands, the viewers understands where we're coming from.
Yeah.
They can make
Anything
their own
else in the
decision.
Gotti thing? Anything else in the Gotti thing that makes
Yeah,
you?
one thing that caught me, they when they put the bug in the upstairs apartment, right?
Yeah.
For a long time, they weren't getting anything. John wasn't talking. They weren't getting anything. So you know what they did? They got together and they said, we got to create something that causes them to talk about something. So they went out and they planted a news story about the Castellano killing to bring it up again. Now, this is years after the killing, right? To stimulate talk. And that's what it was all over the news. It was in the newspaper, it was on television. They prompted the media to do this. And that's what stimulated the talk on the tapes again to get them start talking about stuff.
Wow.
Believe that?
Hey,
You
man,
know,
they can do whatever they want. There's no law with these guys.
and look, I'll say it again. You go back to Joe Pistone, Donnie Brasco, who's now a friend of mine. I mean, I don't care
Yeah.
who.
So
I
mine
like
to
the
me
guy.
too.
I like the guy, great guy. And people say, well, Michael, how could you be friends with him? He put all of these guys away. And I said, hey, he was doing his job. He was an FBI agent. He was undercover for 6 years. 6 years. At any point in time, Chaz, he could have walked into a room. If our guys, that crew would have done their work and said, wait a second, we got to really investigate this and try to find out where this guy came from. At any point in time, he could have walked into a room and been in trouble. And he knew that. The bottom line is he did his job a lot better than we did our job, and we fell for it. The same thing with their surveillance techniques, the same thing with everything else. They just
Mm.
were one step ahead of us. That's it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of guys went down, but hey, it's part of the deal on the street.
Did you know Lucchese, Joe?
I met
Michael?
him. I
Yeah.
didn't know him. I didn't do business with him. I met him once with John,
Yeah.
briefly. Yeah, not a nice guy. I mean, when I met him,
Yeah. Quiet. Yeah.
yeah, very quiet. It's a
Yeah.
shame. I mean, he passed away recently, but
Yeah. Recently. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. He had a club that I worked at, and I knew him from there. He was
yeah,
very quiet, but you could tell that not a guy to cross.
No. He was stand up too, stand up guy all the way.
Yeah, yes, he was. Yes, he was.
Anyway, so that's it. That's the kind of wrap up out of it. Everything else is, the law enforcement agencies competing with one another. Ronald Goldstack, who was a DA at the time in New York, who brought a case against Gotti. One thing I have to say, he was upset because it was during those surveillance tapes in the room that it was mentioned that they got to a juror in the state case, and they knew about it, and they didn't notify the state during the trial to say, "Hey, one of your jurors they got to him." So
Why didn't they notify them?
because they didn't want to give up the tapes, and they would have had to said the tapes were in the room, so they didn't want to expose them.
That's just them egos.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
But every one of them, hey, we brought Gotti down, we brought the mob down, a whole bit like that. But again, it was just a different take on the whole Gotti saga, and I'm sure it's not going to be the last one. That's for sure.
No, I don't. I mean, is there going to be another Don like that again, you think?
Listen, we wondered if there was ever going to be another Al Capone. Was there ever going to be Lucky Luciano? Don Gotti. But I can say, from my perspective and what I see, I doubt it. I don't think. I think that life as we know it, I don't think is going to resurface again.
We don't even. I don't even know who the boss is now.
No,
I don't.
Yeah, well, you know what? They got smart in that regard. Yes. People are staying out of the limelight and trying to be as careful as they possibly can be. That's the only way they're going to survive.
Yeah, see, the old timers, they drove a 1955 Chevy. They lived in the walk-up apartment, a bill. If they lived in a house, it was a single-family ranch. Very quiet, very quiet.
Hey, my father drove a red Plymouth Valiant, a 64 red Plymouth Valiant. My mother wouldn't even get in the car with him. He didn't care. He didn't want to be known. He didn't want to. Yeah, he really didn't. He didn't care about anything like that. But that was the right way back then. But then again, you're making all this money. How are you going to enjoy it? It's two sides to that.
Yeah, that's true.
Money. I mean, I was a little different. I had the jet plane, the helicopter.
Jet planes, helicopters.
Yeah, I was, the new breed,
Was Gotti known as being a generous Don or not a generous Don?
I don't think he was greedy. He wasn't known to be that. He didn't care about money. He was a big gambler. He gambled like crazy, I think he wanted the guys around him to earn. That's what I heard about him.
Who was known as the cheapest Don?
Oh, aside from my father, who was very cheap.
I thought Costello, they said was Costello.
I don't know. I didn't hear that about him. To me, he was one of the smartest guys on the street.
Costello.
Oh yeah, they knew him as the prime minister. I mean, he was politically connected. He was a good business guy. He was kind of like my model of a great boss. But Persico wasn't that cheap. I mean, he was a little bit tight, but I took good care of him, so he was okay with me.
Right.
Joe Colombo was supposedly tight, but I don't know that for a fact.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, I always like to ask those questions, like who. Yeah. Some guys like their guys to earn, and some guys they want to take everything.
Yeah, I know. Well, listen, I knew guys on the street that weren't bosses, but they were like that. A couple of the captains. I don't want to mention their names, but they were very tight. It's like when I got my crew together. I'd say this: I had about 15 guys, and I said to them that were close to me, and I said, "Look, if any of you guys want to get made, this is not the place for you." And they said, "Why?" I said, "Because I'm going to put a lot of time and effort into you. You get straightened out. I propose you. I lose you. You're your own guy. So why would I do that?" I said, "So I'm not going to do it. If you want to leave now, that's okay. I release you. You can go to any crew that you want. But if you want to make money, this is the place to be because I'm going to make you earn." Nobody left. They all want to make money. Yeah. So, I mean, it all depends what you want in that life. The smart guys, it's all about the money, really. It's not about anything else. If you make money, if you're making money, Chazz, you don't need anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of guys get into the life because they think they're going to earn big, and then they get shocked that they can't. But if you're making money, what do you need it for? That's how I look at it.
Yeah. No, I understand that. Yeah. Wow.
anyway, I thought it would be interesting to get your perspective on it also. And
Yeah,
you get a shot, watch it, you'll enjoy it.
I'm going to watch it. It's called Get Gotti.
Get Gotti. Yeah, it's just trending number one. And I think it might be the same company that production company that did Fear City, the one that I was in. That
Right.
I got to be honest, they did a good job on that one. They really did. So, but they do good stuff.
I'm going
So
to check it out. Get Gotti.
so
Is it on Netflix?
yeah, it's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix. Oh, all right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's three episodes.
Oh, wow.
All
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
So, and to all our viewers out there, if you haven't seen it, we recommend that you do. You got our perspective on it now. Might fill in the blanks a little bit when you're watching it,
Right.
uh, and take it from there. But again, you probably heard it before because there's really not a lot new that's coming out about Gotti. But again, different perspective. So,
Right. You're right. But also, if they have some questions about the show, Get Gotti, or really, I mean, look, when they're going to get inside information like you could give, put some questions down about the TV, about Get Gotti, and like we could answer you. Like I just asked you, I said, who was the cheapest Don? Who was? I mean, nobody can answer those questions, but you.
yeah.
So I tell our audience, you got a lifeline here to really, if you want to know the inside stuff about a lot of things, send us some questions.
We really enjoy it. That's all I could say. And we're encouraged because the comments have been, for the most part, I would say 99% have been very encouraging to both of us. So,
Right.
you got questions, anything you want to know, anything that we could be of assistance with, just fire away. If we get to them, we will. But just know that we appreciate it. So that's it for today. You have another episode of the Wise and the Wiseguy, and tune in. We'll keep the content flowing. And if you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned.
All right. This is Chazz Palminteri,
The Wise, and this is Michael Franzese
the wise guy.
tuning off. Bye bye.